a green dream, the EU's climate ambitions. The European Union has a big, bold goal, becoming climate neutral by 2050. That means balancing the amount of greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere with the amount removed. It's a massive undertaking requiring a complete overhaul of how we produce and consume energy. To achieve this, the EU has adopted a range of policies and initiatives. These policies aren't just about reducing emissions within the EU's borders, though. They also aim to lead by example, pushing other nations to step up their own climate efforts. The EU's commitment to tackling climate change is commendable, but the road to a carbon-neutral future is paved with complex challenges. Balancing economic growth with environmental sustainability is no easy feat. The price of pollution. Understanding the polluter pays principle. At the heart of the EU's environmental policies lies a simple yet powerful idea, the polluter pays principle. This principle states that those who produce pollution should bear the costs of managing it. It's about holding industries accountable for their environmental impact. In the context of climate change, this means making polluters pay for the greenhouse gases they emit. This can be achieved through various mechanisms, such as carbon taxes or emissions trading schemes. By internalizing the environmental costs of pollution, the polluter pays principle aims to create a more sustainable future. It incentivizes industries to reduce their emissions and invest in cleaner technologies. After all, it's cheaper to be clean than to pollute and pay the price. The EU's emissions market trading our way to a cleaner future. The emissions trading system, or ETS, is key in the EU's climate fight. Launched in 2005, the ETS is the world's first major carbon market. It covers 40% of the EU's greenhouse gas emissions, targeting power and heavy industries. The EU sets a cap on total emissions for certain industries. Companies receive or buy allowances to trade. Reducing emissions below the limit allows companies to sell surplus allowances. Exceeding the limit requires buying allowances. This system puts a price on carbon, encouraging emission reductions. Section 4. Carbon leakage. When good intentions spill across borders. While the ETS has been lauded for reducing emissions within the EU, it has also faced criticism for a phenomenon known as carbon leakage. This occurs when companies relocate their production outside the EU to avoid the costs associated with the ETS. Imagine a steel manufacturer in Germany facing high carbon costs under the ETS. To remain competitive, the company might decide to shift its production to a country with less stringent environmental regulations, like China. While this might reduce emissions in Europe, it could lead to an overall increase in global emissions. Carbon leakage undermines the effectiveness of the ETS and puts EU businesses at a disadvantage. To address this issue, the EU introduced a new mechanism, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Section 5. Leveling the playing field. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBM. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBM, is a relatively new tool in the EU's climate arsenal. Implemented in 2023, the CBM aims to level the playing field between EU businesses and their international competitors. It does this by placing a carbon price on imports of certain goods from countries with less ambitious climate policies. These goods include products like cement, iron and steel, aluminum, fertilizers, and electricity. Essentially, the CBM ensures that the carbon content of imported goods is subject to a similar price as goods produced within the EU. This prevents companies from circumventing the EU's climate policies by simply importing cheaper, dirtier products. Section 6. A taxing debate. Should history's polluters pay up? The CBAM aims to address carbon leakage but has sparked controversy among developing nations. Critics argue it burdens developing countries, which rely on exports to the EU. This raises the debate about historical responsibility for climate change. Developed nations have been the biggest emitters since the Industrial Revolution. Some argue these nations should help developing countries transition to cleaner economies. This has led to calls for a historical polluter tax to support climate action in developing countries. It raises questions about fairness, equity, and responsibility for tackling a global challenge. Finding effective and just solutions is crucial for a sustainable future for all. Dhanyate.